Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Six Pack Network. I'm your host, Dylan Clemons, and today my co-host is Joe Bond, founder of Fantasy Six Pack. And we are continuing our training camp check-in shows where we are going around to all 32 NFL teams and interviewing a beat writer or reporter or a fan on what they've seen or heard at training camp. In this episode, we are talking the San Francisco 49ers, and here helping us do so is Michael Hauff, a podcaster and writer for the Fantasy Football Faceoff, and Ryan Mulvey, who is the radio host for ESPN Northwest Florida. We appreciate you gentlemen being here. How you guys doing today?
Excellent. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, doing good. Always ready to talk some 49ers. There always seems to be drama every offseason, but yeah, ready to go.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Before we jump into the interview, I just want to remind everyone, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications so you know when a new video drops. And then head on over to fantasy6pack.net/plans to become an all-access member. That's where you get access to our award-winning rankings, draft cheat sheets, and F6P Discord, where you can ask all your custom league questions or advice to anybody on the Fantasy Six Pack staff. And that truly is the best part. And right now, you can also save a little bit of cash by using promo code F6PNFL24 for 15% off at sign up. But that's enough of the shameless plugs. Joe, let's hit these guys with the questions we got for them.
Yeah, man. So, Brock Purdy had himself a pretty good start to his career here. Had a really nice season last year. It's a lot of efficiency. The touchdown rate's pretty high. Do we see that continuing, this year? Like, I feel like touchdown rate's a pretty hard thing to repeat year in, year out like that. But is Brock Purdy and this offense able to repeat that going forward? Michael, we'll start with you.
I would say, obviously, the big caveat, which we're going to talk about, is obviously Brandon Aiyuk and, where he's at and where the offense is without him if he's not there right away. I mean, Aiyuk seemed to be one of Purdy's favorite targets. I still think this offense could be very efficient. I think the game changes. I know we're going to talk about a lot of these guys. We're going to talk about George Kittle. I think this means George Kittle is going to get more targets. You look at that preseason game that they had this past weekend. First two drives, he got peppered with targets quite a bit against the Raiders. So I think, and I will. The other thing I'll say before we go to Ryan is, my understanding is when we saw Purdy in those first games when he first took over for Jimmy Garoppolo, it was kind of an abbreviated offense a little bit. Then we saw last year it opened up more. And we saw what he did with it. He was damn near an MVP candidate up until he played the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. I think that confidence level is still there between Shanahan and Purdy. So if that confidence is there, the playbook is there. And therefore, I think that he could still be efficient.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking on what he said, I think really, if anything, it might get more efficient. And like he was saying, it was kind of abbreviated offense. Last year, Shanahan kind of opened it up, gave him a little more control. But let's be honest, Shanahan schemes guys wide open, whoever they are. Yes, Purdy was his big target, or not Purdy, Aiyuk was his big target downfield, but Ayuk's a fantastic route runner. And a lot of times he was just wide open, so it was easy shots for Purdy to take. Aiyuk obviously is going to be a big part of the offense, but regardless if Aiyuk is in there or not, I mean, the addition of Ricky Pearsall, I know he's had some injuries in training camp. He is a fantastic route runner. Even Juwan Jennings being back for another year, obviously he was a big part in the Super Bowl, big connections with Purdy. But, and Trent Williams, that's a huge thing on the offensive line. But at the same time, Purdy just does so well against the blitz. He was second in the league in pass yards against the blitz, only behind Jared Goff. And of course, he gets pressured all the time, and he's got one of the best quick releases in the league, and that just allows Shanahan's schemes to work so well with Purdy. And he just gets so much hate because he was the last pick in the draft, and he's always going to have that. And I actually think that works towards his benefit because it puts a chip on his shoulder, and I just think he plays better when there's a chip on his shoulder. I think if he got all that credit and was the guy, he may not do as well because he seems like he's had to do that in high school. Even at Iowa State, he was third string quarterback. He comes in, he transcends that program. So I just unless there's some major injuries, I just don't see the efficiency slowing down. That's not how their offense is built.
I agree. And Purdy's just the perfect guy to run this offense, it seems.
Yep.
Looking at the running back position, and this offense kind of runs through the running backs, and Christian McCaffrey is the top dog, and the top guy in the offense, and the fantasy football stud who we all love. But who is the RB2 in this offense? Ryan, let's start with you.
Obviously the easy answer is Elijah Mitchell, but I'm going to say it's Jordan Mason. Obviously they just released Matt Breida today. They have a very deep running back room, and I think that's smart. And hopefully Shanahan kind of, doesn't put so much on McCaffrey this year. But, just looking at Jordan Mason, his just running style is aggressive. He reminds me a little bit of McCaffrey, but maybe a little bit more running harder up through the hole. But Elijah Mitchell is he's had too many injuries. He's a great running back when he's healthy, but I think Jordan Mason's running back too this year. I think he has shown the offense he's more reliable. He's a power runner, but he's also got a lot of speed. And I think he was a great draft. This is his third season out of Georgia Tech. So I think they may list Mitchell as number 2 on the depth chart, but I think Mason's, if not right there, pretty dang close.
Right on. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Ryan anymore. I think it's absolutely going to be Jordan Mason. He's had a great training camp. Yeah, for whatever reason, those first 2 years, he couldn't really grab a hold of that number 2 spot. But I think Elijah Mitchell has also shown us, while yes, I know there's injury concerns with McCaffrey, there's really injury concerns with Elijah Mitchell. I mean, unfortunately, he always seems to get hurt. He's a very productive back, but always gets hurt. I honestly even thought, based on the running backs that they had, that maybe he was on the roster bubble, or maybe he wouldn't dress for certain games. That's where I was at with the way Jordan Mason played in the preseason and training camp. There's other running backs that we're going to get to, but yeah, just like Ryan said, this is a very good running back room. There is some depth there. So yeah, I would 100% say it's Jordan Mason. The only thing I'll say is, and I know Shanahan said he wanted to try and limit trying to limit the touches of Christian McCaffrey. I think there's a difference between when he wants to do that, when he says he wants to do that, when it's over the summer, and when he's in like week 9 and it's time to get going and they got to win a game. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
We'll also see how McCaffrey's calf plays out. That's another big thing. But yeah, it would be Jordan Mason for me going away as the running back 2 here. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, so quick thoughts here on the McCaffrey injury. So, I feel like we haven't heard a lot about the McCaffrey injury. I'm kind of looking it up, and it's just kind of like, yeah, we think he's going to be back. Have you guys heard anything else? Because I personally have not. Anybody?
They always seem to keep the McCaffrey stuff really, really tight to the vest. He's always going to be banged up, but if there's one dude in the league that works as hard, if not harder than anybody on keeping his body in shape, it's Christian McCaffrey. I think he'll be fine. If he, like you said, if he limits his touches, it's also not necessarily Shanahan limiting the touches. McCaffrey wants to be in there every play. He's just one of those guys that just lives, breathes, sleeps football.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those stories that's probably a non-story. He wasn't going to play any preseason action anyway, so hopefully his calf's okay. He's always going to have some kind of designation, in my opinion, but I have not heard anything specific to his availability for week 1.
The only thing I was going to quickly say to you, Ryan, because I assumed you were going to kick it to me, Joe. So I'm sorry if I jumped in front of you.
No, it's totally fine.
Is this the same calf that he had problems with during the playoffs and the Super Bowl? I believe it is. Do you know that for sure?
I'm not for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's that same calf that he was dealing with, and it's probably going to be one of those things: calf injuries, hamstring injuries. Those things they're pain in the butt, and you just got to get the extra treatments on them and hope you can last 60 minutes.
No, totally. Had the 1-1 and I've drafted him, and so I'm hoping he's back.
I've done it plenty too, so don't worry about it.
I think you and a lot of people,
yeah,
right.
So let's move over here to wide receivers, and we already talked about Brandon Aiyuk. Let's just say he's moved, right? Let's say that there is a random trade here. Who's the biggest beneficiary in this wide receiver room? Does Debo's like targets go way up, or is there somebody else plugging in? Michael, we will start with you.
I am gonna cheat quickly, even though I know we're gonna talk about it. I am gonna say George Kittle because I mentioned George Kittle earlier. I think he's gonna get peppered with targets. I think that changes their game scheme. As you know, we always talk about George Kittle, great tight end, but there are certain games in which they phase him out and they have him block a game. It'd be interesting to see how Kyle Shanahan manages that if it ends up in that space. But I would say right now, if I had to go wide receiver, probably Jacob Cowing. Because Ricky Pearsall would have been the obvious guy picked in the first round, but he has shown. We talked about Elijah Mitchell not being able to stay healthy. Ricky Pearsall has not been able to stay on even the training camp field. He was able to practice today. He was wearing a blue jersey. From my understanding, everything went okay today. We'll see how he feels in the morning, but it's a matter of who's ready to go. So right now, to me, that would be Jacob Cowing. Again, caught 7 of 8 targets for 90 yards and a touchdown during the preseason. Did have a rush of 19 yards. I know people want to take preseason with a grain of salt, but it is him getting work where Ricky Pearsall is not. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, I mean, it too depends for me, like the matchups. Who are they playing? What's it going to look like? Obviously, if Brandon Aiyuk's not on the team, but if they can go a run-heavy scheme for a matchup that works well, yeah, Kittle's going to obviously be more in the blocking role, and that's why he's such an interesting fantasy draft because one he'll go for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and maybe one game he'll have 2 targets and 12 yards. But I'm glad they signed Juwan Jennings to a 1-year extension because he's third Juwan for a reason. And is he the best route runner? No, but he's a big target. And he's got fantastic hands. And obviously Purdy's proved that he's got a great chemistry with him. Obviously Cowing's huge. And we're still kind of waiting for the emergence of Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell as well. So you've got some speed that can kind of fill that deep route role as long as they got good hands like Brandon. But yeah, I think Kittle's targets definitely go up in schemes. You see maybe a little bit more passing out of the backfield in certain ways, but I don't see Debo's targets really going crazy just because Debo is such a specific type of wide receiver, running back, kind of the athlete out there. So I think, I'll see Jennings. I agree with Cowing as well, but kind of spreading it around a little more and, feast or famine for Kittle, depending on the matchup.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've been talking a lot of Kittle here.
Let's
play a little bit of, let's go the other way. And let's say Brandon Aiyuk doesn't get moved. How do you guys see Kittle's role this year if that's the case? Is it just the same thing, or could we still see a bigger leap in the passing game and a little bit more consistency? Ryan, your thoughts?
I think you're going to see a little bit more regardless, just because I feel like last year, despite having a great season, there was just games, regardless of the blocking, and that he was just underutilized. And I think he's one of those guys, when you get him involved in the passing game, you get him involved early, it's very momentum driven. He brings the energy, he's making plays out there, and the guys feed off of him. So I think he's so important to get involved, regardless of Aiyuk being on the field or not. He's such an important part of the offense from a momentum standpoint, not only just catching first down balls and touchdowns, but I think he's more involved in the offense passing game this year, one way or the other.
He's everybody's favorite tight end, right? Sorry to cut you off.
My son, since he's 4 years old, he's been doing this all the time watching.
I love it.
I would literally take a bullet for George Kittle, but I'm not even. That's not even me being funny. That's a legitimate thing. I would do it right now if I had to. No, but yeah, I mean, I am serious. But I will also say Brandon Aiyuk, if he stays on the Niners, I remember when the Niners media was talking to Nick Bosa after his contract negotiations from last year that bled really damn near close into the season. And he said, right. And he did say that kind of hurt him a little bit. So does it hurt Aiyuk? It's fair to ask the question. How much is he running there? I know he says he's got a back injury, but we all know it's because he's, holding in. So I think in the first few weeks, especially, you can see Kittle get a lot of targets. And then if you're someone if you're playing fantasy and if you want to then sell high, and then maybe after a few weeks, once Aiyuk gets his legs under him, if you want to trade Kittle then in fantasy at that point, if depending on your roster construction, you could do that. But I think Kittle gets more involved, especially early, given everything that's going on. So, and the one other thing I'll mention before we get to the last question or the other question was just, the whole thing that bothers me about this whole thing with Brandon Aiyuk, no one's even mentioning Trent Williams and him not being there. And that is more significant than Brandon Aiyuk not being there. 1,000% more. 1,000%.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. He is such a force on that offensive line, and they like he's missed games, and it is a drastic difference in the offense and just how much they can, push the line and really just protect Purdy and get CMC involved. It's a big difference. So I'm curious to see where that goes too. But I mean, obviously with fantasy, we focus on the receivers. You kind of forget about the offensive line sometimes and just how important they are.
Oh, absolutely.
So last question. We're asking this to everybody that comes on about the team is who's a player that you've heard about this offseason or seen, some clips of that you think is going to surprise people, good or bad, that fantasy managers need to kind of put on their radar?
I guess I'll go first here. I'm gonna selfishly put one thing out there. Again, we talk about it's not fantasy related. Like people always talk, like they don't focus on offensive line. Fantasy football players don't always focus on defense. But I'm gonna selfishly say Malik Mustafa. I have said since the moment that kid was drafted, I said he's gonna do some damage in that back. In the secondary there, we saw it there in that first game when he was playing against the Titans. It's a nice problem to have, a bunch of good players in the secondary. We'll see how much headway he can get in that first year, but I do love him a lot. So Malik Mustafa, I would keep an eye on, even in special teams. But Isaac Guerendo, the running back that they also drafted, I think that he's going to get a decent amount of touches. We saw he had the 92-yard kickoff return against the Raiders this past weekend. He got a lot of work in the backfield there. Yes, I know it's preseason, but again, that's a bigger bodied back, unlike Elijah Mitchell, who tends to get hurt very easily. I think we could see him in some situations, and I'm going to go off on a really crazy limb here. When they drafted him, I thought to myself, and Ryan, you could tell me if I'm off my rocker on this one. I initially thought to myself, maybe they're going to try and position Guerendo to be the fullback of the future, the dynamic fullback of the future that they can use in multiple ways, because Kyle Juszczyk, A, is getting long in the tooth, B, they're coming up against a lot of contracts. They already had to restructure them. So that was just a thought in my mind, but I do think that that's a guy to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fantastic take just because, the fullback in the Shanahan schemes is such an important part of the offense. I mean, from the blocking standpoint, they run so many tight box sets that he's got to chip all the time. And he's a great offensive weapon, too, in the goal line. One guy, I mean, I know kick returning is not necessarily fantasy stuff, but with Ronnie Bell healthy and taking kick returns with the new kickoff, where I think we're going to see a lot more big time kickoff plays. I think he's somebody that, Trent Taylor, they brought Trent Taylor back. He does a great job on the punt return, but I could see Ronnie Bell really having an awesome season returning kicks, because that has always been our Achilles heel from winning Super Bowls, going all the way back to 2012 against the Ravens, and then obviously this past year against the Chiefs. If you just catch that one, we probably win the Super Bowl. But
we do. Okay.
Stupid Chiefs. Stupid Chiefs.
But
people who are playing in Scott Fishbowl, keep tabs on that one. Got the return yards.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the return yards.
So there you go.
Yep.
Good stuff, guys. I want to thank you for coming on. Before we close out, want to give you both an opportunity to tell everybody where they can find you and what you got going on this season. I'm gonna switch it up. Ryan, you can go first.
Yeah, absolutely. We're down here in the Florida Panhandle, Panama City Beach on ESPN Northwest Florida. We have the Inside Drive Monday through Friday. It's from 11 to 1 in the Central Time Zone. And we have all sorts of fun guests on, obviously a lot of football. We talk a little golf too, hence the
our boy Keith Fleming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was actually just down. We had our ESPN Northwest Florida draft yesterday. 4 drafts simultaneously live, 52 players. It was awesome. And the Champions League did not take Christian McCaffrey first. He actually went third, which was an interesting topic. But yeah, you can follow us. It's ESPN Northwest Florida, Facebook, X, YouTube, Twitch. We got a mobile app, all sorts of fun stuff. And of course, come down to Panama City Beach and have some fun.
Awesome. Sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah,
You guys can feel free to follow me on X at the FF Realist. My heart and my home is with the FF Faceoff. You can follow at FF Faceoff. We're coming at you, FFfaceoff.com, with all your fantasy football, NFL sports betting needs. We even got a pretty good soccer podcast, actually, if you're into betting on soccer. I know, he name drop golf. I'll name drop soccer. So there is some good stuff coming out there with soccer, but our YouTube channel is booming, which we really appreciate. So if you guys go to YouTube, search FF Faceoff, hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell icon, notified every single time we go live. I feel like I'm on my own podcast because I'm just saying it off the top of my tongue.
Good, man.
But yeah, that's it. So but very excited to get on with this football season. I wish these contracts were resolved with the Niners, but as the world turns in Santa Clara.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff, gentlemen. I want to thank you again for coming on, and hopefully we can do it again.
Sounds great.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
See you guys.
Cheers.
See you guys. Awesome stuff.
All right. So that's it for our San Francisco 49ers training camp report. Want to thank Michael and Ryan for coming on and giving us a lot of great information to take into our fantasy football drafts that we've got left over here. Before we head out, remind you to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave those comments. We appreciate it. And make sure you check out the rest of our training camp report shows here, wherever you're watching or listening. Have a good one. Peace.